All right, so this is very timely because we just went through the first question, and it was about how are you using, what are you doing to communicate with clients today? And we heard a lot about technology, and we've just seen, I had trouble getting in, and I use these things all the time. So would love to hear about how you're communicating with clients in 2020 in the COVID economy.
Yeah, definitely. So I think everybody's gone digital, right? So the question is, how have you gone digital, and then what communication are you putting out? Like most advisors, we're using Zoom or just I call it the 2019 conference call. We're bringing those back. Everything doesn't have to be a Zoom. If it's just an easier phone call to make, we're trying to do that too. Give everybody a little break from the screen fatigue. But one of the big things, as far as we really sat down at the beginning of this and said, what communication do we want to make? And, I think I talked to our team right in the beginning of the initial COVID quarantine and said, we have, there are two options for the way people and firms, I think, are going to react. And one is that they're going to put their head under the sand and just think, well, this is going to be 3 weeks, and then I'll pop back in and start having my normal client meetings. And I said, or we can be great, and we can triple our communication. You as advisors go beyond their investment management because their businesses are struggling. They're struggling with children at home, parents and grandparents that they can't see. So we need to be, dealing with the whole client situation and let them know through our communication strategy that we're here for them beyond just, a client portfolio review meeting that might get punted from March to June or something. So I think it was really more the content of our communication became critical on we're here for you, and then just really being mindful of giving them data, especially as later in the year, obviously we saw the political climate heat up, and there was a lot of questions around market and portfolio behavior for, Democrat versus Republican. What does this tax law potentially change look like for me? So we were trying to be mindful of giving them data and not letting media and fear and things drive any decisions they were trying to make. So a lot of behavioral finance around our communications this year.
Okay, thank you. I think that leads us to a very clear next question, which is we now talked about what we've been communicating. I'd love to hear about, because this is a disruptor conference, what are some cool texts or apps that you guys are using? At my firm, we've used GoToMeeting for 8 years. So for us, this wasn't that big of a change, but we've started using things like Doodle. It's like a voting app that lets you create a meeting, right? Instead of trying to send out an email saying, hey, when are you available? When are you available? We just send it out and everybody votes, and then it matches us. We started using a thing called Gleamio to reward people for helping promote our weekly happy hours. Love to hear what kind of texts you guys are doing or apps or things that you're using to get these communications out, other than the U.S. Postal Service, which I was a little surprised that that's come back. Taylor, why don't we start with you this time? We'll let Nina catch her breath because I know what she just went through to get in here.
Yeah. Well, in the spirit of communication and the topic of communication, one of my favorite tech tools that we use as a team every single day is called Text Expander. It's a really light application that lives in the background of your computer, and it allows you to create templated emails that you might send over and over again to clients and prospects, and you're sick and tired of writing them over and over again. And you can create these templates and organize them and save them and share them with your team, and even add little areas to customize them for the client's name or last 4 digits of their account number or whatnot. So you can be prompted to customize certain pieces of those templated emails. And so those templated emails are synced up with our workflows. So our workflows at certain steps of the workflow will call out which template to use and what to send and when. So that's been a huge game changer for us from a communication standpoint. And then second, I think maybe just more of what was the other one I was going to share? I'll leave it at that because I forget the other one I was going to share with you.
Well, if you think of it, we'll come back to it. Jim, you want to go next?
Yeah. So I probably spend more on software and data than I do on office rent at this point. So I use something called hidden levers. which is a subscription, based software, which enables me to stress test portfolios and stock accounts for different scenarios like COVID, trade wars, market corrections, etc. So, one thing is that when clients have questions, I can kind of tell them what the potential impacts might be on their portfolio and help quantify those impacts. But it also is able to put together some really cool proposals as well. So I love it. Super fun. Clients enjoy it. Well worth checking out.
Yeah, I did a demo of it. It's really interesting. The scenarios that they've thought of almost scare me sometimes when I looked at it. It's like,
well, yeah, they always run the
war over here. What can I expect to happen to my portfolio? And I'm like,
best to worst case scenario, and the worst case scenarios can be pretty dark sometimes. But they're always updating their scenario database, which is really cool. So it's always very fresh, very current.
Okay, so we've got templates. We've got a different way of showing portfolio risk. Nina, if you've caught your breath, what technologies, apps, cool new things have you been using to communicate with clients?
Interestingly, we were already cloud-based and we're pretty technologically forward. So as far as new things, I don't feel like we added a lot. I feel like I really had not done a lot of shooting video just from like my phone or iPad, which I did a lot of throughout this year, a lot more than I ever have. And so that was a bit of a learning curve for us. And not only just I could shoot them, but then what was the best way to upload them to where we wanted to send that client communication has been a learning curve, still is. I probably need to consult Taylor. I feel like you're the pro on all that stuff. But so I think one thing that we added in that I don't know if anyone's ever heard of it, but it's called Designer, and we started using it, and we use it more than ever probably this year, DESYGNER. Really great, simple graphic tool. You can make social banners. You can make really anything. And I actually am married to a graphic designer, but I don't get any free work really very often from him. So it gave us a tool to quickly and very visually appealingly create a lot of graphics that we could use and incorporate into our more digital, whether it was social posts or different communications this year. So since we were doing more of that, it just became a quick and easy way for us to produce some of those graphics or kind of templated things. So I really like that program, and it's either free or very, very inexpensive.
It's funny. You and I have so many things in common. I mentioned I'm also from North Carolina, but I am married to a photographer / graphic designer who we do pay is on the payroll, does all of our social stuff, and we use Canvas, which I very much like as a system. So,
I've heard of that.
I'm on the investment end of the company, so I don't know how much it costs, but I do know I'm very happy with the ads we produce. So, Dasarte, you want to go ahead and tell us, and then I think we'll give you the two-parter. Go ahead and talk about new tech that you've been using, but I want to go to kind of the adoption of old tech being social media as well, and we'll roundtable that, how you're using something new and how you're embracing social media. This has been something that advisors have historically shied away from, and I think that's changed a lot this year.
Yeah, great questions. Number one, I want to say January of this year, we made a decision to take our firm more digital. I did an experiment last year, and I had about 738 client prospective meetings. And in San Francisco, where I was at the time, only about 43 of those people came into the office. A lot of the times, these were clients that just wanted to see me. They didn't really have any business. So I was like, hey, should I pay for this office rent when more than half the time people aren't coming in? And the decision was yes. As you can see with COVID-19, crisis accelerates change. And we have been a heavy adopter of Zoom and all of the functionalities. So when I say that, I've used Zoom to record my podcast, to then put those podcast videos onto YouTube, strip the audio, to put on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and SoundCloud, Spotify, all of the different kind of leverage networks. I do a monthly or quarterly town hall for my clients, and this is an exclusive event for my clients to come hear from a speaker that is renowned in their field, right? So we had Brian Portnoy, who wrote a number of books, right, that are bestsellers on our group. We had Justin Forsett, a former NFL player, come speak to our clients about grit and perseverance during the height of the downturn, right? So all of these things we've used Zoom for, and it's been one of the best tools for me. I was one of the 10 million subscribers in Q1 that subscribed, that boosted the stock price, I guess, right? So we've been using Zoom a lot. Shout out to Justin Castelli. I use this app called Circle, which is an app for communities, right? My whole thing about the Berknell Financial Group client book of business, if you will, is to make them a community. We have clients in our group that work with other clients, a realtor that might work with a lender, but just providing this space and place for them to foster some kind of camaraderie, right? Being Berknell in the center, I think that builds lasting relationships, and it's been a great networking tool for my clients. So Zoom has been big. Circle is big. We plan on using that a lot more next year and seeing what other cool tools we can use to enhance our client experience.
And let's start with you here with the social media. Have you used social media differently, or is it just talk about your strategy there? Because I think most advisors are scared, and I don't think there's anything to be afraid of anymore.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta give some slack and some grace for that, right? Because I feel like when you're coming from the traditional way of coming into, being a financial advisor, you're typically at a place that has strict compliance regulations, right? You have to say, hey, can I say this? Can I release this blog? What's okay and what's not? So advisors have to unlearn a lot of what they've been learning for so many years to then jump on social media and try their best to be authentic. So with me, actually, I did a fast last year after leaving another conference. I think that's where I met Nina at in Arizona. And I said to myself that I'm going to really be intentional about how I spend my time. Number one, I'm only going to use Twitter. I'm only going to use LinkedIn, and I'm going to be as authentic as I can be. So the people that gravitate to me, I know they're there for good reason, right? And I use Twitter as a way to amplify my voice. I think Jim Lee said it before. It's things that he's interested in that he writes about, right? So to express my interest, and then for my future clients to get to know who I am. And I think that if advisors look at it from that perspective, it's not the big beast of social media anymore. It's just a way to show your true self, your value as an advisor, right? And your perspective on a lot of the things that are happening in the world. So it doesn't have to be scary. It's just an extension of yourself and the value you're able to bring to the clients that are already looking
Great.
for you.
Does anyone else have anything to add on social? Otherwise, I realize we're running low on time. So does anyone have anything important that they'd like to add there? Okay. So I want to go to what I think is one of the most important questions with disruption. We're talking about technologies. We're talking about communication. We're talking about the ways we get it out there. We're talking about social media. But it all comes down to one thing, right? I work in the ETF industry. Fees are I'm behind the first zero fee ETF. So I've helped bring them to nothing. However, advisors, I feel, have been able to maintain a fair fee because it's not really just advice you're selling, it's trust, right? And I guess the next big question is, how do you maintain that trust beyond communication, beyond technology, beyond content? What is it that makes each of your firms unique and keeps that client's trust? So Nina, do you want to go first? Then we'll go Taylor and Jim.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an important point. As the industry continues to have more technology for financial advisors as competition, and it's less like the bank down the street or the wirehouse down the street, I think we're seeing more, it's less a person competing against us, but it's more the technology. And so you've really got to tighten those client relationships. And for us, from day one, we've really talked about, I mean, I know we hear the word holistic financial planning and it's kind of old at this point, but we talk about being with the whole client, all of their life, and being very transparent, very authentic, outing value without a doubt, really being their personal CFO and helping them make good decisions. But we also point out those decisions along the way and talk about, do you remember when we did this? And now this is the effect that we're still having from that decision we made together. We also intentionally, this is going virtual this year, but we have an office space that's designed from day one to be comfortable and not like the stuffy bank look is what I call it, not to knock that, but it looks more like an architect's office. We have living room furniture, not office furniture in our lobby. And we only have round tables. So it's our conference room is small. It's not this big boardroom. And it's an incredibly collaborative conversation. And that we don't talk at them, we talk with them. And through multiple options that we'll give them. And we always say, it's our advice, but it's your decision. And at the end of the day, they need to be able to make it with confidence with our guidance. And so I think that's the biggest thing with trust is just really making sure it's a collaborative conversation. They see value, and that you're also sharing with them like that, they can feel that comfort of talking to you and being honest with you. Your body language is important. The physical space they're in is important. And then also the language that you use when you're talking to them to be very open and, open question oriented. So that's kind of how we've always operated. Digital has made us have to pivot a little bit on that because they're not getting some of the other things. But I think for the most part, we work with clients for 5 to 10 years. And so we've already established that.
Okay.
And now our client meetings are running 20, 30 minutes online. They're just like, hey, how are you? Chit chat. Yeah, I'm fine. Just wanted to say hey.
Beautiful. Taylor, you want to add anything there?
Yeah, for us, it's really comes down to building structure and processes into our practice so that we're regularly providing, massive amounts of value to our clients. So, in the first quarter of the year, we send our clients, again, a physical document that tells them tax documents that they can expect to receive towards the end of February from Fidelity. There's a copy for them. There's a copy for their accountant. Just after tax season, we do a tax analysis using Holistaplan and identify tax planning opportunities. We have a few more of those things that we do throughout the year so that we're always adding value, again, each quarter of the year. And then we have biannual meetings that are on the calendar in the month of May and the month of October that, again, just builds that structure into the practice. So clients, kind of rely on us to set those meetings and they know what to expect and what's around the corner. And they're never asking what has Taylor done for me lately? So that structure and those processes have really gone a long way in building trust and continuing to build and earn that trust from our clients.
Beautiful. All right. So Jim, I'm going to come to you with a different question because we're down to 2 minutes.
Sure.
Spark is on a very strict schedule here. So in the pre-interview, I asked each of you, what's your unique ability and how that becomes your value prop. I'm going to kind of ask a different question now, which is, what would you be if you weren't a financial advisor? And I just want to hear this because I think it sums up what you really are to your clients. So Jim, why don't you start? Try and keep it short because we got 1 minute and 20 seconds.
Sure. Yeah. So how I started all of this is I started out as a coder. When I was in high school, I wrote software and I published it for technical analysis of stock prices. And I wrote it for something called the Commodore 128. And the 128 stood for 128 kilobytes worth of memory. That's all you got. And you learn how to code very consistently. So for me, it's always been a matter of figuring out what happens next. And if I wasn't, financial advisor, I'd either write code or I would just keep on doing what I'm doing as a futurist. So it's been a lot of
I'm going to call you a Bitcoin miner. So I'm just teasing. Dasarte, what would you do if you weren't a financial advisor today?
Well, after I finished my football playing career, I thought that I was going to be an architect, actually, right? So embedded in all of the kind of firm marketing material, if you go to Berknell.com or if you hear me talk on the podcast, I always say that our firm's goal is to help you design your wealth on your terms. And that comes from the idea of being an architect or a chief wealth designer for my clients. So I think that really is the mindset that I approach my clients' kind of assets and financial circumstance with, right? Is saying, how can we build this and design it in a way that is suitable to you and your goals? And from that, we've created this full service firm through Berknell.
All right, so do that. Nina, he's building the financial plans and the financial health of our clients. What would you be if you were not a financial advisor today?
I would 100% try to figure out a way to get paid to travel. So whether I was a travel writer, I was actually an English major, creative writing minor. I fell into finance, but food critic, something somehow to eat well, drink well, and stay in nice
That's beautiful. When I had my hedge fund, we had an analyst who wanted to just cover cruise lines, and there's only 2 public ones at that time, but it was exactly for that reason.
Smart.
Taylor, you get the last word. What would you be if you weren't a financial advisor today?
Yeah, I'm with Nina. I'd love to get paid to travel, but I'll one up her and say I want to get paid to travel and play golf. So I'd say professional golfer. I'd love to be at Augusta right now, gearing up for tomorrow.
Wonderful. All right, so I want to thank all of you for joining us today and talking about disruption in the financial service or financial advisory practice. I want to thank Spark Network for having us, and I think we'll call it a wrap there. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.